Why did plug power stay? That question matters more than whether hydrogen is popular or whether markets are optimistic. It matters because staying is expensive. Staying means continuing to deploy capital when utilization is uncertain, when margins are thin, and when the broader clean energy narrative has shifted from enthusiasm to scrutiny. Many companies entered hydrogen during a period of cheap capital and generous expectations. Fewer are willing to remain when those conditions disappear. Plug Power's decision to stay is not a vote of confidence in hydrogen as an idea. It is a judgment that hydrogen solves problems that do not go away when sentiment changes. Hydrogen did not become difficult recently. It has always been difficult. It has always required heavy infrastructure, coordinated demand, long timelines, and tolerance for inefficiency during early deployment. What changed was not the technology, but the environment around it. Capital became more expensive. Grids became more constrained. Policymakers became more selective. In that shift, hydrogen stopped being a speculative opportunity and started being tested as infrastructure. Many projects failed that test. Some companies paused, some pivoted. Plug Power did not, because its exposure to hydrogen was never based on a short cycle of validation. It was based on the assumption that certain system constraints would intensify over time. Most conversations about hydrogen begin at the wrong level. They begin with components, efficiency numbers, or laboratory performance. Those details matter, but they are not decisive. Hydrogen fails or survives at the system level, where production, storage, transport, and demand must align across time and geography. When that alignment breaks, hydrogen becomes expensive very quickly. When it holds, hydrogen can operate even when costs are imperfect. Plug Power's strategy has consistently been oriented around this alignment problem rather than around a single product or technology bet. Plug Power is often described as a fuel cell company or an electrolyzer manufacturer. That description understates the intent of the business. From early on, Plug Power pursued control across multiple points of the hydrogen value chain, including production equipment, storage and liquefaction, distribution, and end-use systems. This was not a diversification play. It was a response to the most dangerous risk in hydrogen economics, which is utilization mismatch. Hydrogen assets are unforgiving when they sit idle. Electrolyzers with low capacity factors destroy unit economics. Fuel cells without consistent demand become stranded. Vertical integration is an attempt to reduce that risk by shaping both supply and demand rather than hoping the market aligns on its own. Hydrogen is often framed as a competitor to batteries, but that framing oversimplifies the problem. Batteries excel where they should. Short-duration storage, passenger vehicles, fast response grid services, and distributed energy systems are areas where batteries are efficient and scalable. Hydrogen does not replace batteries in these domains. Hydrogen becomes relevant where batteries struggle structurally. As storage duration extends beyond hours into days or weeks, battery costs rise sharply. As industrial processes require molecules rather than electrons, electrification alone becomes insufficient. As grids saturate with intermittent generation, flexibility beyond short-term storage becomes valuable. These are not edge cases, they are the friction points of large-scale electrification. As renewable penetration increases, these friction points do not disappear. They intensify, intermittency increases, transmission congestion worsens, load concentration grows around data centers, industrial clusters, and ports. Hydrogen enters the system not as a universal solution, but as a pressure valve. Plug Power stayed because it judged that these pressures would grow rather than resolve themselves. Staying was a bet on system evolution, not on market mood. One of the least discussed but most decisive factors in hydrogen economics is utilization. Nameplate capacity is easy to sell and easy to misunderstand. A large electrolyzer installation looks impressive on paper, but if it operates intermittently or without firm offtake, costs quickly become unmanageable. Hydrogen systems reward high duty cycles and punish idle capacity. Plug Power's early focus on material handling, logistics, and industrial fleets reflects an understanding of this reality. These are environments where energy systems are used continuously and where downtime has measurable cost. Material handling was not chosen because it was glamorous. It was chosen because it was operationally demanding. Warehouse fleets refuel frequently. They require uptime. They operate indoors where emissions matter. Hydrogen fuel cells competed successfully in this environment not because they were theoretically superior, but because they solved an operational problem. They reduced downtime, simplified refueling, and maintained consistent performance across shifts. This was one of the few environments where hydrogen could compete on value before cost parity was achieved. That same logic extends to other industrial and logistics settings. Backup power for critical facilities, port operations, and fleet-based transport all value reliability and speed over marginal efficiency gains. Hydrogen does not need to be the cheapest option in these settings. It needs to be predictable and available. Plug Power's persistence reflects a strategy built around these high-utilization niches rather than around mass-market adoption. Electrolyzers receive significant attention, but they are not the core risk in hydrogen deployment. The underlying technology is sufficiently mature to function. The real challenge lies in integration. Grid access delays, renewable intermittency, water constraints, balance of plant reliability, permitting complexity, and offtake uncertainty determine outcomes far more than stack efficiency. Many hydrogen projects fail not because electrolyzers do not work, but because the surrounding system does not. Plug Power's deployments are best understood as system tests, rather than technology demonstrations. Policy support plays a role in enabling these deployments, but it is often misunderstood. Incentives do not remove hydrogen's challenges. They compress timelines. They allow infrastructure to be built before perfect markets exist. They accelerate learning curves and cost reductions. Plug Power's strategy implicitly assumes that policy support is transitional. The objective is not to rely on subsidies indefinitely, but to survive long enough for hydrogen systems to reach economic maturity. This is infrastructure logic, not startup logic. Financial volatility has become a defining feature of hydrogen companies, and Plug Power is no exception. That volatility is often interpreted as evidence that hydrogen itself is failing. This interpretation ignores the history of infrastructure technologies. Oil, gas, nuclear, solar, wind, and batteries all experienced long periods where capital investment preceded stable returns. Early participants absorbed risk while systems were built. Many did not survive. What mattered was not short-term profitability, but whether the underlying system addressed a constraint that could not be avoided. Hydrogen addresses several such constraints. Long-duration energy storage remains unresolved by batteries alone. Industrial processes that require molecular inputs cannot be electrified away. Energy transport across long distances without building new transmission lines remains difficult. These problems do not disappear because capital becomes cautious. They persist. Plug Power stayed because it judged that these constraints would eventually force solutions, even if the path was uneven. It is important to separate persistence from inevitability. Staying does not guarantee success. Plug Power could still face restructuring, consolidation, or competitive displacement. Many early infrastructure builders do. The significance of Plug Power's decision to stay lies less in its individual outcome and more in what it signals about hydrogen's role in the energy system. Hydrogen is no longer being treated as an experiment. It is being tested as infrastructure. At Renee Energy, technologies are evaluated under stress rather than optimism. The question is not whether a technology looks compelling in a favorable environment, but whether it survives when conditions deteriorate. If subsidies decline, if utilization underperforms, and if capital becomes expensive, what remains viable? Hydrogen survives only where duty cycles are high, infrastructure is shared, and demand is anchored. Plug Power's ecosystem-oriented strategy reflects an attempt to operate within those survivable zones. The broader hydrogen landscape is undergoing a filtering process. Early enthusiasm attracted many projects that lacked alignment between production and demand. As financial conditions tightened, those misalignments became fatal. This is not a sign that hydrogen is failing. It is a sign that hydrogen is maturing. Infrastructure technologies are shaped by selection pressure. Fragile models are removed. Robust ones adapt. Plug Power's decision to stay reflects confidence in its ability to operate under that pressure. Hydrogen will not dominate the energy system. It will not replace electricity where electricity works well. It will not displace batteries in short-duration storage or passenger transport. Hydrogen's role is narrower and more specific. It fills gaps where electrification encounters structural limits. Plug Power's belief in hydrogen is rooted in this specificity rather than in a vision of universal adoption. That distinction matters. Technologies that attempt to do everything often fail. Technologies that focus on irreducible constraints tend to persist. The energy transition is not a race toward a single solution. It is a process of assembling a system capable of operating under new constraints. Solar and wind generate clean electricity. Batteries manage short-term variability. Grids move electrons where they can. Hydrogen absorbs excess energy, stores it over longer durations, transports it where electrons struggle, and enables industrial processes that electricity alone cannot decarbonize. Plug Power stayed because it believes hydrogen remains necessary within that system. Ultimately, the question of why Plug Power stayed is inseparable from the question of why hydrogen still exists in serious energy strategies. The answer is not enthusiasm, it is necessity. Grid congestion is increasing, renewable intermittency is growing, industrial decarbonization requires molecules, long-duration storage remains unresolved. These pressures do not disappear when markets lose patience. Hydrogen does not need to be cheap everywhere. It needs to function where alternatives fail. That is the threshold for infrastructure relevance. Understanding green hydrogen requires abandoning the search for simple narratives. It requires examining where systems break and which technologies can operate under those conditions. Plug Power's decision to stay reflects a belief that hydrogen occupies one of those irreducible roles. Whether Plug Power ultimately thrives or not, the logic that kept it in the game is rooted in system reality, not optimism. If you want to explore green hydrogen through this lens, focusing on utilization, cost thresholds, infrastructure friction, and execution risk rather than hype. The link to H2 Hub by Renee Energy is provided in the YouTube description.